It's kind of that piece with what you're saying of the bringing your love into yourself. And there's a revelation in that of seeing that to the degree that I'm giving love at the expense of myself, I'm actually depleting myself, and I'm not actually giving love, because if I'm losing love for myself, I can't really be moving as love. And usually if I'm giving love at the expense of myself, usually what that means is that we're often giving our love to something egocentric in the reality. Like if I was just really compassionate with, like, you know, what I've spoken about, this is the discernment piece. With him, there were parts where he would sort of go into the victim mode. And the victimhood is not the same as the actual vulnerability of the true wounded child. They're different. And so it's like, if he was in victimhood, which is actually the egoic identity on top of the pain, I can't give compassion to that. I mean, it's like, what is compassion in that moment, right? Because compassion is as much about the death. But in terms of like the nurturing thing, I can't give the nurturing to him in that moment.
Because it's a bottomless hole.
It's because it's not actually it. It's not actually the real thing that needs the nurturing. And so even though, and what I noticed as I was strengthening my masculine and growing strong in my integrity, like while that was developing, there was a lot of these kinds of things of having to really be clear on myself of like, I can't give in to what he's asking me to give into. I need to go with the integrity of what I really see going on. And that might be, oi, that's a belief that's not true. Hey, I'm not giving you this love that you're like, mummy. It's like, no, I'm not your mother. I'm your lover. This thing is not what I'm here to love, and so right then in that moment, it's like the cutting through or the love. And again, it's the love of yourself first, as the standing in your integrity and standing in the honesty of what is your intuition, which is what you were saying, like the growing strong in that. And then as a result of that, it's kind of like we have to dissolve the belief that we have, especially as women, that we're being not loving when we withdraw from his ego. Because often we go, what keeps us hooked in is like, oh, but I need to be loving, and like, that's my thing here. But it's like, no, it's not. If he's playing in his ego, then you have to see it's not loving for him. It's not loving for you to deny yourself with what's honest for you, for one. So that's the first thing. Stand as the love for yourself. But two, it's not loving for him to nurture his ego, even if he's identified with his ego and he's asking for it. He's asking to be loved. Because he's like with James in the beginning, when I would cut those cords, he was not bloody happy about it. He couldn't see in that moment what I could see, which was that I was giving him a great grace, actually. Whereas now, like I said, when I bring the reflection, he's very receptive right away. But that took a time to develop, and for him to mature beyond, and to develop the discernment for himself about when he was in the ego and all of this. But yeah, there's some belief work that can be done here to support this, I think, in getting clear on what really is love in this moment. Because we get trapped, and this is the space thing, where we have a belief that to be a woman and to support a man is X, Y, Z. But what we've been trained to as women is like, what's loving as a woman is to enable his egocentric crap. And that does not help him at all, even though it might protect him from his pain, but that's not helping him. Because actually, and the thing is, at some level, often men have, like they might be kind of like wanting you at one level to bend to his ego, but actually at another level, at some level really deep within him, in his subconscious, he has a rage at the feminine for their lack of standing in that power. Like, and that often is not what you meet in those initial phases, but like, you have
That's what I've started to see with me, actually.
Because I could feel that he had rage at the feminine. I felt his rage in his subconscious like many months before he actually got to it in his consciousness, and we can as women. But it's like, even though it's difficult though, because we have to trust what we're sensing as women. Because if he's playing at ego level and he's playing at it like, I want you to bend to my ego, we kind of have to see that like, we can't, it's not loving, like as women, it's not loving for us to play into his ego. Just as it's not loving for a man to hold space for a woman's story. It's the same thing. If a man is holding space for a woman not being accountable for her crap, like man's not being loving when he does that. And that can be the trap that men fall into when they become really like they want to love women. Because he was quite like this. He bent to, before me, the women in his life were like really manipulative, like just crazy women. I had like really manipulative, crazy men, right? So he would often be like, like holding the woman all the time. But he thought he was being loving, but he wasn't. He was just letting her play around with shit and go, carrying on. It's not loving. And so it's like, what helped me was like really getting into like, and I wrote about this for many months. Like I really it's like, what actually is love? And tearing down the beliefs about what it is to love in any one situation. Because the true flexibility comes with the listening to the integrity and the honesty. And that can mean bringing a sword. That can mean putting a foot down. That can be coming in as nurturing. It can be like whatever it is. But it's not just, there. If he's sort of going, but like the crying of like, haha, like this crying, which is not the true pain which needs the nurturing. And it's the same, like, because you as a woman also, like, it's like growing to that point where you want your man to stand strong in relationship to your crap as well. Like, you know, where it's like he doesn't bend to your bullshit. And that's like, that can be just as challenging for men. We think, okay, women standing in as feminine power is challenging because of like the patriarchal stuff. But actually it's very hard for men too, to stand as the clarity and their love with a woman who's not willing to like take responsibility for whatever belief system she's moving with. Like that's really scary for men as well. Yeah. I found that the tearing down the beliefs was very helpful to really like actually sort out what was love, and to see anything in me that was operating as like in the moment where I needed to bring truth, where it's like whatever would come in is like, but I can't do that because like, what are you? What is that? Does it make sense? Like actually like it's helpful. I would Socratic question it. I would like totally deconstruct. I think actually that's why I was able to move pretty quick with things in the beginning. And I think it's a part that many people neglect of like really just what are the nuts and bolts of what your system is doing? Like, whoosh, you know, I mean, get some bloody graphs and maps if you need to. Like, just, what is this? Does this make sense? Tear it down. Tear it bloody down. And then when you know that that's crap, the next moment that something happens where you need to step in and you kind of hear that little thing come in again, you know that it's not real. So you go, oh, fuck off. And then you stand in what needs to be done in that moment. And like with what I was saying with Ada, there is a growth period in that, because even if you get to that point where you know what you need to do and you feel strong in that, the first time you do it, it's uncomfortable, because it's like you have to integrate that truth that you've realized in your consciousness. Like, okay, I know what's true now, but that actually has to get downloaded into reality, and that's the uncomfortable bit, where it's like you have to be willing to like feel through the discomfort, feel if there's any trauma that comes up in relationship to it, like, actually there's rejection and abandonment and how I feel when I get the projections and da-da-da. And that's fine. It's like you just meet anything that's going on, and, you know, that's the not complex, but more of the challenging part of that. But you can just take care of that in that moment. Yeah.